If you were in the administration today, how would you advise the president on economic policy?
Well, I think the probability of my being in the administration is relatively low. But if they were to ask me, I think I would start by saying, think about your objectives as threefold: growth, broad-based participation in the benefits of growth, and job security. And once I had those objectives in mind, I would say the following. We need public investment, infrastructure, but you have to figure out how you're going to pay for it.
How do you pay for it?
Well, that gets into the whole broader question of what kind of a budget you want to have. I'll tell you how I would not pay for it, and I wouldn't pay for my tax cuts this way either, but I think you'll see a lot of pressure in this direction. I would not pay for it by reducing the social safety net, and I would not pay for it by block granting or capping Medicaid or food stamps, but I think you'll see a lot of pressure in that direction. I would not lower the top rate for individuals. I think that serves no useful economic purpose. And then I would address the whole set of what I call reforms. You can call them what you like. I think we need to have sound immigration policy and a pathway to citizenship. And the immigrant population that is now being so criticized plays a really important role in our economy. H-1Bs, I'd have enough so that businesses don't have to move their activities abroad to hire the people they want. They can hire them here. I certainly would have lifelong learning, which I mentioned a moment ago, so that American workers can adjust as time goes on.
But how do you pay for that? How do you preserve the social safety nets? How do you, pay for lifetime learning? How do you do the infrastructure
I think the reality
projects?
of life.
What is the money going to come from?
I think the reality, whether we like it or we don't like it, and I think, by the way, this is going to be reality no matter who's in office, we're going to have higher taxes, in my opinion. And I think they should be progressively designed.
Not under this administration.
They don't seem oriented that way at the moment. So I think that's probably right. But I think the realities of life are we are going to need additional federal revenues. Now, there are areas in which perhaps we can spend our money more wisely and we can spend it more effectively. And I'll tell you one area that virtually never gets that kind of review and needs it, and that's defense. It's an enormous part of our budget. And when I was there, I used to argue, why don't we take a look at this, and why don't we we don't want to sacrifice one iota of national security. We just want to make sure that we're functioning as effectively as we can. But it's very hard to get that done politically.
Now, when you were Treasury Secretary, the numbers were great. We went from a deficit to a surplus. Growth figures were really strong, 4% growth. As you're watching and hearing the current administration, do you think the plans that it is laying out will get America to the point where it could deliver those kinds of numbers again?
Look, we have a very serious problem, and that is that we are in a transformational period economically, at least in my opinion. Technological development, which is taking place at a very rapid pace, while very good for productivity, is creating tremendous pressure on wages and on jobs. And as a consequence, very large numbers of American people are struggling, and the data all shows that. What we need is a policy agenda that I think of as an inclusive growth agenda, but you can call it whatever you like, that addresses those issues, and it involves some traditional or conventional policy measures like getting our fiscal house in order, and others that are new and different. Do I think we're on that track now? No. So I think the answer is no. And I think there's the risk that we're going to take some kinds of measures that can be very counterproductive, and you mentioned one before. Yeah, if we had some additional fiscal stimulus, maybe it would have some effect on wages. But if you have very substantial additional fiscal stimulus, given that we're very close to true full employment, I think we're predominantly going to have is inflation.
What are you talking about? Are you talking about tax cuts, or are you talking about infrastructure when you say fiscal stimulus?
Well, tax cuts that aren't paid for are a fiscal stimulus. Infrastructure that's not paid for is a fiscal stimulus. Another area of risk is tariffs. And if we have tariffs, increased tariffs, we're going to have higher prices for consumers. We're going to have higher input prices for American manufacturers, which means they'll be less competitive. We run the risk of retaliation from abroad, which will reduce our exports. And that's a whole set of policies that can be highly detrimental to American workers.
So we're not going to get 4% growth with these kind of policies?
I think that the prevailing view is that we'll grow somewhere to 2.25% this year. It's possible that we'll grow a little bit more if we do have a lot of the stimulus, although I think on balance it'll be highly adverse with respect to the longer term. It might have some short-term effect. I don't think very much. I think very little, actually. So I think somewhere in the low twos is probably a reasonable expectation, unless we do things that are negative. If we do things that are negative, that, of course, would be quite adverse. Now, I think we could do a lot better in the long term. Not even the long term, in the intermediate term. But it means having a sound, inclusive growth policy agenda, which would include the few items I mentioned before, plus many, many others.